Welcome to the Tailgate Debate. You're here with Anthony, Zach, Jamie, and Earl.
What's
going
up? All right, so this is episode 1 of the podcast. We don't have a name yet, so we'll get to that later. So I'm here with James and Zach. Tonight we're going to go through, what are we doing? We're going to go through the preseason picks of all the games for our team. So Zach and I repping Tennessee and Jamie Notre Dame. And then we'll go through the hometown teams, Maryland and the Ravens in the second episode. All right, you guys got anything before we get started with the picks? Or you just want to get straight into the picks?
No, let's do it.
All right, so we'll just have to go through game by game and then just tell me whether or not you got them as a win or a loss. All right, so the first game is home against Ball State. This is Tennessee's schedule. Home against Ball State. I got to win.
Yeah, everybody has it as a win. It's Ball State.
Yeah, we all got it as a win. Jamie, win?
Yeah.
All right, the next game is at Pitt. That's going to be in Pittsburgh, but it's going to be at the Steelers Stadium. I'm actually going to be at that game. I got pretty good tickets. I'm pretty excited about that game. I got it as a win.
Yeah, I was winning also, even though they're number 16. I definitely think that they're overrated. For people who watched the game last year, we should have won. We had the wrong quarterback in. So I think with their loss to the quarterback and a couple other draft picks that we're in good shape.
Yeah,
I agree with all that. I also have it as a win. I think the Pittsburgh, I think they play in the Steelers Stadium every game, right? That's their home stadium.
I don't know. Is it?
I think it is.
That is a home game.
It was nice of you to say that they're playing at the Pittsburgh stadium, but that's also their stadium.
I have no idea where the hell Pitt usually plays. Don't really give a shit.
I was just say we can passive aggressively shit on them for not having their own stadium.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why it was such a big deal that Kenny Pickett, because he didn't have to do anything. It's the same. Just change his uniform.
I like Kenny Pickett. We're not going to get into the NFL stuff today, but I like, and he had a pretty good preseason game yesterday too. I think Pickett's going to end up being the starter for the Steelers, but let's save that for the NFL stuff.
Yeah, save it. But that's definitely something we could put on the bet spreadsheet because I think he's a complete scrub. So.
I agree with that. And he also had maybe the biggest bullshit play I've ever seen in football. So
okay, I'll bet you both. No problem.
Yeah, exploiting the fake slide. Yeah, that's bullshit.
Yeah, I don't like that either. We need to save that for a rainy day, I guess. but we all got Pitt. I do think that that's a measuring stick game because I do think that Pitt's is going to be pretty good. They're obviously in top 25 in the preseason poll. We'll talk about that later. But then I just think it's a very competitive second week game, and really it's going to, I think, put one team on the right path. And I like us to win that game. I actually like us to win pretty convincingly.
I actually think Pitt is super overrated, and if you guys lose to them, I think you guys should be concerned about your season.
What do you think their record's going to be?
I haven't looked at their schedule, but I mean, yeah, I'd have to look at their schedule, but I don't think that they'll finish in the top 25 this year.
No, I don't think so either. I actually agree with you, Jamie. I think they're pretty mediocre, and to me, even though it's a road game, it needs to be a convincing win to feel okay with the SEC schedule afterward.
I think it still is a measuring stick game for you guys because if you win, I mean, you don't know how good you are, but at least you know you're a good team. If you lose, I think it's very concerning, and you're going to have a up and down season. I think.
I agree. A loss is not good coming out of the gate for the expectations for the build up of last season. I think a loss is worse than a win would be good. So I think a win is necessary to really kind of continue to move in that direction. That's a good sign, but a loss is I think is a devastating blow in the early part of the season.
Yeah, so it'd be a mediocre win, but a bad loss.
Yep.
Yeah, that's definitely where I'm at too. I think we need to beat their ass.
Yeah, we got to dominate. I do. We can get into Pitt, I guess, after we do our team picks, but I think Pitt is actually going to be competitive in the ACC. I think the ACC is super weak. So I do think they'll finish in the top 25 because I don't think there's a lot of competition in the ACC. And I think they'll be competing for the ACC title game again. I think Pitt's going to be a little better than you guys are giving credit for, but we can get into that a little bit later. We can check out their schedule and we can do them game by game too if we want to. All right, our third game is home. We get after Pitt, we come back home against Akron. We all got that as a win. There's no reason to even go into that. The game after that is Florida. Florida comes into Knoxville. I got it as a win. Zach?
Yeah, I have us beating them too. I think they're going to be pretty dog shit this year, so we really need to beat them.
Yeah, I think it's a win as well. Florida, they still have talent, but they're obviously, they have a new coach. They're rebuilding some things. So you guys are more established. It's also at home. So I think you guys win that game.
Yeah, I'm curious to see Florida's first game because they open up with Utah. So I'm really curious to see how they do against Utah because Utah, I think, is top 10
Yeah,
preseason. Yeah. So that should be
they're number 8
of where Florida's at, I think.
Be a good team this year. They're returning a bunch of starters from last year.
What was their record last year? Do you know?
I think they had 2 losses. They played Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. They lost on a last-second field goal, so they're legit.
All right. Well, we can check them out too after we go through our team picks. Utah is one of those teams that I'm not going to put any faith in, so we can check them out.
They were 10-4.
Yeah, 10-4. I'm not impressed. I don't care if they got all their starters back. I mean,
I think those 2 losses were the conference title and Rose Bowl or whatever.
The last 2.
Yeah, I think so. I had to look at their schedule in detail, but
yeah, let's check them out later because I'm not all that impressed with Utah. Certainly not in the top 10.
They dropped games early in the season because I think they sort of how you start at Milton. They started a different quarterback who wasn't very good. As soon as they changed the quarterback, I think they won every game besides the conference championship and then their bowl game. They're good team.
All right. Well, we'll see. All right. So after Florida, we all got that as a win. We traveled to LSU. I got it as a win. Zach?
Well, I think you should probably preface that with you have every game as a win. But
well, you spoiled the surprise.
I have this one as a loss. I think even though LSU is changing coaches to Jamie's favorite coach, it's still tough to play in LSU. And for some reason, I feel like even when we're clearly the better team, it's just always kind of a crapshoot with them. I mean, even the last time that I remember us beating them was that Hurricane game. And that was a crazy game. We were down like 21-0 and put the backup quarterback in and came back.
Yeah.
Like those games are always weird. So at LSU, I think LSU will pull it out.
Jamie?
I think it's tough to go into Baton Rouge. Is it a night game?
Well, they don't know.
It doesn't get set till like the week before, but most likely it will be.
Yeah, it'll probably be a night game. The environment's going to be crazy, but I think Tennessee does win that game. I fucking hate Brian Kelly, so no way I'm going to put that you guys lose. So that's all.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that if there's a way to lose a game, that Brian Kelly will find it. And so I agree that LSU is a tough environment to play in, but they're not the LSU of old, and they're going through some changes. I think Brian Kelly is a terrible big game coach, and I think from a talent perspective, they're probably going to have more talent than us on the field. But I like our coaches better. I like our style of play better. I like our ability to score better. I like us to win that game, and I do have us going 12-0. So thanks for ruining that right in the middle of it. All right. So after we go to LSU, we come back home and play Alabama. I got that as a win.
Yeah, I had that one as a loss too, obviously. Because until we beat them, I'm not going to fucking believe it. So, and we've played them tough a few times over the last few years, but it just seems like the fourth quarter, even when it's close, it just gets away from us.
Yeah, I think the same way that we kind of didn't spend any time on talking about Ball State and Akron, I don't feel the need to spend any time to talk about Tennessee and Alabama. I think they're gonna, beat you guys pretty easily.
That's disrespectful. That's disrespectful. To say it's not even worth the discussion is disrespectful. It's a rivalry game that we've been on. We've been on the wrong side of for quite a streak now. I think it's 14 years, but. Nick Saban Nick Saban has built a dynasty in Alabama. So I mean, they've been doing this to everybody.
For sure.
But teams that are coming up and can score and put a lot of pressure on their defense. they're the ones that have been effective. A&M was that style of team. The couple times they beat them. LSU was good all the way around, but their offense was very potent, and they put a lot of pressure on their defense. So I do think that our offense is gonna put their defense to the test. And I'm not all that impressed with their offense. They can score, but I see that game as a shootout. So
yeah, I mean, you make a good point about teams that can score giving Alabama trouble. I don't really believe in your guys' skill players and your athletes to, I think you guys will score. Obviously, you guys have a good offense, but you guys don't really have difference makers or players that Alabama's going to look at and say, watch out for that guy.
Okay, well that'll be their undoing then. All right. So
yeah.
Get
Before we move on, I was just going to say, even last year, the game was back and forth until the fourth quarter, and we just ran out of steam.
Exactly.
But even obviously, it's been a fucking 14-year losing streak. There's been probably half of those games been one possession games. Yeah. So, it's just a matter of getting the breaks and taking advantage of them.
Yeah, getting over the hump, and also, so the people that don't watch Tennessee and Alabama football don't know that this series has always, this series has always been about the streaks. It's been Alabama right now. Before that, it was Tennessee on a long streak. Before that, it was Alabama on a long streak. That's the history of the series anyway. And so people aren't that familiar with that. But once we snap it, it's going to be on like Donkey Kong for about 10 years. So get ready for that. All right. So I got it as a win. You two guys got a loss. It's fair to have it as a loss, but I'm not going there. Next is UT Martin at home. We don't need to talk about that. That's a win across the board. The next is Kentucky. We get Kentucky at home after UT Martin. UT Martin, I think, is the homecoming. So Kentucky comes into town. We beat them last year by a field goal. In a pretty good game. That was a shootout too. They were really good running the ball. We were really good passing the ball. Wasn't a whole lot defensively going on for anybody. And I know that Kentucky right now, a lot of people are picking to finish second in the SEC East behind Georgia. So I got it as a win. Zach?
Yeah, as a Tennessee fan, Kentucky is Kentucky. So even when they have a good team, back when they had that fat bastard at quarterback and Andre Woodson and those guys, we still beat them. Took 4 overtimes and a 2-point conversion, but Kentucky just, whenever they beat us, every Tennessee fan is embarrassed. So yeah, I always have confidence in that game, regardless of how bad we are.
Yeah, I have this as a loss for you guys. I think this is the game that you're probably supposed to win and you're expected to win, but you drop. The quarterback for Kentucky, Will Levis, he's a really good college quarterback.
So he's solid for sure.
Yeah, I think Kentucky will be a solid team this year. And for them to come into to Knoxville and beat you guys would be a surprise to me, but I do think that they do win and they beat you guys.
What the hell does that mean? Would be a surprise to you, but you picked them to win?
That's my game that you guys drop that you're not supposed to drop.
Okay. I don't understand your logic, but we'll go. So after Kentucky comes into town, we go on the road to Georgia. I got this as a win.
Do you want to talk about why, or just leave it at that?
Listen, the Georgia game, you talk about a crazy series. Those Georgia games are always crazy. And I think Georgia lost a ton on defense last year. I'm not all that impressed with their offense. I think their offense is pretty basic. I think they run it really, really well, but it's pretty basic. So I think they lean pretty heavily on their run game and the passing game to the tight ends. So I'll be curious to see what we do defensively this year against their run game, and if we can force them to throw the ball and get some stops there. But I think this is just a wild series, and I think with Georgia losing a lot of players to the NFL draft, and kind of sort of not rebuilding but rebooting for sure. I like us to go in there and maybe get something done. So that's why that's my rationale.
Yeah, I have it as a loss. I agree with you. I think I will say any individual game, if we won it, I wouldn't be surprised. When you have a high scoring, high powered offense, you're always going to have a chance. But their defense just dominated our offensive line last year. And I know they lost their whole front seven, which was historically a great front seven defense. They gave up 36 points through like 10 games or whatever it was. But it's just one of those things where they've been recruiting well for years and they've had the same coach and systems for years, and we haven't. So I don't know if we have the horses to keep up with them.
Well,
But I do think Stetson Bennett is a bitch, though. So I'll say that.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like Georgia, they were loaded last year. Their team was pretty good. And he was just a game managed quarterback where, he didn't do anything great, but he also didn't do anything to lose the game for you. I have Georgia as a loss. But I will say, if you guys beat Kentucky, I think that's a game that I wouldn't be surprised if you guys won. Just all that momentum going into Georgia, I think you guys would pull that off. But since I had you guys losing to Kentucky, I don't think there's any way that you would lose to Kentucky and then go to Georgia and beat Georgia. So I do think Georgia kind of reloads. They did lose a ton, but they've been recruiting well. They'll reload and they'll take a step back for sure from last year, but I think they'll still win that game.
all right. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm pretty fair across the board. So then the last 3 games, we go home against Missouri, at South Carolina, and at Vandy, and we all 3 have those as Tennessee wins. So at the end of the day, I got Tennessee going 12-0, and Zach has them 9-3, and Jamie, you have 9-3. I think 9-3 is a really, really good season if that's where it ends out. I'm not going to be disappointed with that, but obviously, this is our year. So that's how we get down. This is our year. And look, so before we get into Notre Dame, I want to talk about this. So this article that popped up yesterday that I saw.
Well, hold on. I want to talk about the Missouri and South Carolina games just real quick.
Oh, okay. All right.
There's not much to say. I was just going to say last year we scored like 110 points in 2 games against those 2. And South Carolina, people seem to have a lot of faith in for getting better. And I think that's just because the coach's name is Beamer. I don't think South Carolina is a good team. And they're not like on the rise or anything like that. That's all I wanted to say before you go on.
Well, they did improve in the second half of the year last season. And so I think that people are really referencing the improvement they showed over the course of the season. I don't think South Carolina is a rollover game. I think we got to go in and win that game. I don't think we'll drop it, but I don't think it's 56-0. So I think South Carolina is still gonna put up a fight. I don't think it'll be like it was last year, as lopsided as it was. Vandy is done, and Missouri is terrible. And so those 2 teams, I do think that they're completely irrelevant at this point. But South Carolina, I think, is trying to get something done, and so they're going to be looking for a statement late in the season.
So I think it's kind of similar to the Pitt game where you said it would be like a fine win but a bad loss. That's kind of how I feel about the South Carolina game.
Oh, I agree. Yeah,
I wouldn't say it's like a 0% chance we lose or anything. They could definitely beat us. I just don't think they're a good team.
Yeah, I agree with that. We should definitely win that game. So pretty respectable records that we have for Tennessee, I think, across the board. But this article that came out yesterday was that some coach, it was an anonymous quote. So I don't know how reliable those anonymous things are. But they said that this coach and an offensive coordinator, apparently, or defensive coordinator, said that, Hendon, and I'm paraphrasing, that Hendon Hooker wasn't that good at Virginia Tech. So now he has great numbers. And so you have to question whether or not this is more of a system-friendly environment for him versus him getting that much better. I think the thing that struck me was calling him a system quarterback. I mean, you can technically call anybody a system quarterback. I mean, every quarterback plays in some sort of system. We all know that. But when I think of system quarterback, obviously it's a derogatory term, and that Hawaii coach said it about Tim Tebow back in the day. But what's interesting is Tim Tebow, to me, is a system quarterback. Tim Tebow was a guy that was limited in his ability to throw the football. And so he was in a system that was very friendly and was able to mask some of his limitations throwing the football. And so much like Lamar Jackson at Baltimore, the play calling, everything is designed to sort of mask or avoid getting him in trouble with the throwing the football. And so to me, that's a system quarterback, a system that's pretty wide open and throws the ball all over the place. You get a quarterback who can make those throws. I don't really understand the shot there. The guy's making the throws. I don't really get that. What do you guys think about it?
Jamie, you want to go first since you are the not Tennessee fan?
Yeah, like I think obviously you can call any quarterback a system quarterback. I wouldn't put Hendon Hooker in that category, but I do agree that the offense that Tennessee runs, it does put him in position to have better numbers and have a better performance. But at the end of the day, he still has to play well and make the throws to have those numbers. So I don't know what the person was trying to get to. Maybe that at Virginia Tech he didn't do very well because the system that he was in wasn't like the system that Tennessee's running, that's obvious, right? Like we know that Tennessee's offense is explosive and better than what Virginia Tech was doing with Hendon Hooker. So I really don't. I mean, I would have to see what the article said, but I don't really see Hendon Hooker as a system quarterback. But I will say that I don't know where you guys put Hendon Hooker on like a list of like top 10 quarterbacks in college football, or where you see his skills translating to the NFL. But I don't rank him high or project him high to like NFL. Like his draft grade, I don't really see as being like a high draft grade, and I don't rank him as a top 10 quarterback in college either. So I don't know what you guys think about that.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the NFL. It's weird to me because if your system puts you in a good position to make good, like, easy passes, then what are you supposed to do except for make them, which he does? I mean, I think a lot of quarterbacks could run the system that we're in, but he's doing it at a very high level. Like last year, he came in the third game. He had, 33 touchdowns and 1 pick. Like that's not because he's a system quarterback. He ran the offense well. But I could agree that the offense is favorable to statistics when you're talking about a hurry up offense and trying to score a ton of points. And college, can be manipulated that way. So I'm not sure if he translates to the NFL or not.
I think we need to be clear that when I say a good quarterback, I could care less about the NFL. I don't care about the NFL. So to me, when the quarterback is playing, the players in college, you evaluate how good they are at that level, because most of the players in college are not going to translate to the NFL. I just don't think that's a good way to sort of gauge whether or not somebody's a good quarterback or in a system. But what's interesting is we were talking about Drew Brees a couple of weeks ago, and I said that his stats were jacked up, that I believed primarily because of the offense that they run, and that they run a lot of their run plays are actually pass plays. So they're doing these little swing passes, the running backs, which are very effective, but it really kind of boosts up Drew Brees' stats. Nobody in the world would say that Drew Brees is a system quarterback. That pumped up his stats, but he's still a good quarterback. So the system that lets the quarterback throw the ball, which is his job, more, and he does it effectively. I don't understand why coaches would take shots at that. You want a quarterback who can manage the offense that you run, and if that's passing the ball, I mean, you're a quarterback. That's what you're supposed to do. I thought it was a really stupid ass comment.
Would you call
that it's anonymous?
Well, that's how they are. Would you call like Navy or Georgia Tech's quarterbacks system quarterbacks, or?
Yes, those are system quarterbacks.
Well, Georgia Tech, they don't run the option anymore, but the Navy definitely, that triple options is a system.
Yeah,
those guys are system. Those guys really aren't. I mean, of course, they're quarterbacks in a triple option, but they're more running back, right? They throw the ball maybe once or twice a game.
Yeah,
they're basically running and pitching.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I was just curious where you draw the line at like system quarterback. Are you essentially just saying he can't throw? Is that like?
No, to me, when you call it, this is my definition. I'm not saying this is the definition, but for me, when you say somebody's a system quarterback, what you're basically saying is this person has thrived in this system, and that system was able to hide their weaknesses as a football player, because you're saying it as a derogatory term. You're not complimenting them by saying, "Oh, you're a system quarterback." So that's the way that, to me, a system is something that hides your weaknesses and allows you to flourish more as a result of an effective system versus your skill set. I think a good quarterback will be effective in whatever system they're put into. My issue with calling a quarterback in our system that throws the ball a lot. First of all, we're the only system to our offense is that we're no hurry. We're no huddle. So we're in a hurry up offense the whole game. But other than that, we run the ball a bunch. We pass the ball a bunch. We throw down the field. We throw to the sidelines. I'm not really sure what the system is that they're referencing or what the shot is, but I know that the hurry up is part of that system that they're talking about. So we run a lot more plays in theory. But yeah, to me, a system is how do you allow this person to flourish when they otherwise just couldn't? Do you know what I mean? I'm going to mask their weaknesses.
I guess the issue I have with your definition is how vague it is, because in that sense, you could say Tom Brady was a system quarterback because they were hiding his lack of mobility by running quick passes and shit.
Well,
like every system is going to mask weaknesses.
No, but I said if what it highlights is your ability to throw the ball, you're a quarterback. So if they're saying if the system is to have you throw the ball 80 times a game and run 0 and you do it effectively, that's not you're a quarterback, so you're doing your job the way that you're supposed to do it. And if you can run on top of pass, good for you. Then you're a dual threat guy, that's great. But a system that allows you to throw, which is your job as a quarterback, that's not a system to me.
Okay, so you're taking issue with the fact that it's a slight kind of insinuating that he can't throw.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's bullshit. Obviously he can make the passes. He's made plenty of passes in tight windows. That's his job. He's a college quarterback.
And he can run the ball.
So I don't agree with the system quarterback comment for Hendon Hooker. And really the only time that I've really heard someone say system quarterback is when they're talking about a quarterback that doesn't translate well to the NFL. So like when Tim Tebow and like quarterbacks similar to that are in systems in college, and even like every Ohio State quarterback, right?
I was gonna say Pat White and those types, yeah.
Yeah, so like that's usually when that term comes up. So it's very strange that someone would label Hendon Hooker a system quarterback now, but also the fact that, like we all said, like he's in a system that allows the quarterback to have good stats, but at the end of the day, he's still making all the plays and throws. So I don't get it. I don't understand why someone would label him as a system quarterback.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me. But Pat White is an interesting example that you brought up, because Pat White, I actually thought was a good quarterback. I thought Pat White was a pretty good passer of the ball. But that West Virginia offense was designed to run a lot of plays. But I thought that he was above average passing in college. And he ended up being not doing much in the pros. But he's one that I missed on. I thought he was going to be pretty good in the pros.
Well, I think West Virginia ran the spread before it was like commonplace, right? With him, or the read option and stuff.
Yeah, they were early. I think they were early on. And Texas Tech was too, but Texas Tech was doing more passing out of it versus running. And whoever this coach is, they didn't really. I didn't see much elaboration in the quote. It was a pretty short quote, but I got the impression that it was more sort of that kind of dig, like sort of that Texas Tech kind of vibe. Which Pat Mahomes came from. So are we just going to throw a Super Bowl trophy away because he's a system quarterback? It's so stupid. It's so stupid. I'm not saying that Hendon Hooker is Pat Mahomes. I'm saying if the guy can throw the ball, yes, you don't know what he can do if he's not in a pro style. How is he going to translate the pro style? But he's in college. He doesn't have to translate the pro style. That's a different level. That's a different discussion. It's stupid as shit.
Do either of you, would you put Hendon Hooker as a top 10 quarterback for the 2022 season?
Yes.
For all of college football?
Yeah, just for college, not like projecting to the NFL, just as a college quarterback, is he a top 10 quarterback?
Yes.
Yeah, I think, well, at least statistically, if he doesn't get hurt this season, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he was at least at the Heisman Trophy invite.
Absolutely.
He had 33 touchdowns and 1 pick last year. That's ridiculous.
Three picks.
Oh, sorry, 3. Either way, it's ridiculous. So
Those are,
if he has a full season, we get a couple of big wins.
So do you genuinely like you really think that he'll get an invite to the Heisman ceremony? Like you truly believe that, or you wouldn't be surprised if that happened?
No, I wouldn't be surprised if he's healthy for the whole season. We beat the teams that I say that we're going to beat. Go 9-3, beat Florida. Maybe upset Georgia or whoever. Sure.
yeah, I think the record would be the thing that holds him out of the ceremony. So if Tennessee does go 12-0, 11-1, and we get the upsets, then he's a lock to be on the stage. But if we go 9, but if we go 9-3, 8-4, there's not a lot of quarterbacks that get, or players that get invited on teams that have pretty mediocre records.
Yeah, I agree with. You just said that if you guys go 12-0 and beat the team and win the national championship, yeah, he'll be at the Heisman. Like, not a shocker, but that's not reality, or that's not what people are projecting. So I think that would be a bold statement to say that Hendon Hooker, you wouldn't be surprised if he's at the Heisman ceremony. I don't think he has any shot at that unless you guys go 12-0.
Well,
if we go 10-2 and beat Alabama or Georgia, I mean, he's going to have the numbers, obviously, because at that point he'd have to.
Yeah,
and you know how the Heisman is. They just base all their shit off stats. They don't watch people play.
For sure.
I'm not saying he's the best player.
Yeah.
I think he's a very good fit for our offense and benefits statistically from that.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, but if you guys beat Georgia and Alabama, you're going to go 12-0.
I said or. Like if we go, let's say we go 9-3, lose a game that I didn't predict, and then have a big upset.
Yeah, I think if you guys go 12-0 or 11-1, Booker would have a chance to make the Heisman ceremony. Anything less than that, it ain't fucking happening.
Let me just say this. First of all, if we go 12-0 or 11-1, he's at the Heisman ceremony. Forget that. All right, that's a lot. But I want to change what I said, because I said that mediocre records, that the guys don't typically get invited. That's actually not true. The winners typically have the better records, but there have been some players that,
unless you're Tim Tebow.
No, hold on. There have been some players that had marquee wins on mediocre teams, like Manziel.
Johnny Football. He beat that Alabama team, which was amazing, and he had crazy games all season. Manziel deserved the Heisman.
Yeah, he was a highlight reel.
Right. Tim Tebow, I think the Florida team was like 9-3 or 8-4, and his stats were actually worse than the previous season or something. He regressed and he won the Heisman. Right? Is that right?
No, he reversed.
Reverse.
His stats were worse when they won the national title. He got the Heisman, and then the next year his stats were better, but the team was worse, and he didn't win the Heisman. But all the old Florida players were just pumping it out there on the sports networks that he should still get the Heisman.
I mean, Charles Woodson is the fucking epitome of what you're talking about.
They won the national title.
I know, but he was a fucking corner. Or a punt returner.
That's only because Peyton played for Tennessee. If Peyton Manning wore a Miami uniform, a Notre Dame uniform, Michigan, any USC, it was a landslide Heisman win. The only reason that Peyton didn't win that Heisman is because he's a Tennessee quarterback. So I don't even want to get in that discussion. It pisses me off. I don't watch the Heisman show anymore because of it. So
I think the issue with Peyton is that he never won the big game.
Oh, is that right?
I'm joking.
What's the big game?
I'm joking.
The Florida game?
I mean, there's a few. I mean, he had some struggles in college and the pros.
What was his record in college? You're talking about the Heisman. No, I don't want to hear about the pros. What were his struggles in college? Because what I remember is he beat the shit out of everybody, and Tennessee got out-coached against Florida. Out-coached.
Yeah, I said that jokingly. I didn't know you were going to get this upset.
Yeah.
So calm your tits.
Yeah, don't be talking shit about Peyton.
I was joking. I love Peyton Manning.
All right.
Win the big games.
All right, whatever. I mean, he did win some big games.
Yeah, for sure. He's one of the all-time great quarterbacks of all time.
And when Florida was beating us with Peyton, Steve Spurrier, those Florida teams were unbelievable. They were great. Everybody always talks about the fun and gun with Steve Spurrier back then, but those Florida teams were great defensively, and they were great running the football. Those were good teams.
Sure.
So and Steve Spurrier was a better coach than most coaches in the country at that time. It's just the way it was.
Yep.
So that's that. Yeah, I do. I hear what you're saying about Hendon Hooker. But a lot of people are saying he's a dark horse for the Heisman to get an invite, maybe not to win, but I don't care what anybody says. If your stat line is even close to what it was at 31 touchdowns and three interceptions, it would be an absolute slap in the face to not get invited to the ceremony. Tonight, at least be in the you got to be in the discussion at that point.
Yeah.
Those are crazy stats. And here's my thing: you're not doing it in the ACC. You're not doing it in Division II or whatever they call it now, the sub bowl, whatever. You're doing it against the Alabamas, the Georgias, the Floridas. I mean, you're doing it in the SEC. Those are impressive numbers.
Yeah, but the problem is what you're saying is true, but the problem is that's not how the Heisman. That's not how it is.
Yeah.
You have to be on a good team, and you have to put up crazy numbers, and you got to be playing for a championship in most years. I think last year, the only person from the SEC was Bryce Young, right? The rest was Aiden Hutchinson from the Big Ten, Stroud from the Big Ten. So they don't even. You guys had one guy from the SEC that made the finalist.
Yeah, I hear you. And I know we're talking about the Heisman, but I honestly, I truly don't put much stock into the Heisman. I think it's way overrated. I don't like the discussion every year. The only reason I would like to see, I do think Peyton should have won it because for what he did, but as a fan, I don't watch the Heisman ceremony. I don't really. I mean, there's so many good players in college football, and there's been so many snubs over the years. The best players just don't always win. I do think it is quarterback heavy. It is I don't care what anybody says on this planet. If you play on those marquee teams, those big market teams, you're more likely to get a trophy. There's just certain elements to it that I don't really care for, so I don't put a lot of stock into it. But there is a certain level of validation that comes when the players getting talked about it. So I think it would be good for somebody like Hooker, who's playing his ass off. I mean, give him the recognition, give him, put him in the discussion. I think he deserves it. But for me, I don't care about the Heisman.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's kind of bullshit because, like an offensive tackle or nose tackle or somebody is never going to win it, even if they're clearly the best player in the country. Like Ndamukong Suh was a monster in college. He single-handedly almost pulled an upset in the Big 12 championship.
Yeah, but here recently, you have seen defensive players get some recognition. So defensive players who have crazy seasons, they get invited to the Heisman ceremony. They don't win, obviously.
Yeah.
It's an offense and a quarterback heavy award, but you've seen some more recognition. I think Suh was actually invited.
Yeah, he was invited, but he never had a chance of winning. I mean,
yeah, and last year, Hutchinson was there, the defensive end from Michigan. Manti Te'o was there when
him and his girlfriend.
The Netflix series is out, so check
it
that.
Is out. What's it called?
I don't know.
Stupid.
I'm super embarrassed that they made it. I wish they would have just let it die.
Is that the title? I'm super embarrassed that they made it.
Yeah, check it out though. It's awesome.
Did they interview him or just people around him?
No, they interview. Well, yeah, he's involved, but they interview the person who actually catfished him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's embarrassing.
I thought you were going to say there was an empty seat next to him the whole time in all the clips.
No, he was truly catfished.
What's the name of it?
You asked me that once already. I told you I didn't know. I'm not supporting it.
Okay. Hey, listen, I don't really give a shit. Okay. You're sitting here.
Why'd you ask?
Because you're sitting here saying, "Hey, why don't you watch this, man? You need to watch this." You don't even know the fucking name of it.
I was joking. I was giving it a plug because it's Notre Dame. I was joking. I hate that they made it. And the other thing is, you'll probably watch it because you watch shit like, Sharknado and 3 double D titties and that's the type of shit you watch. So you probably should do it.
No. First of all, the movie you're talking about is Piranha 3 Double D. All right.
Did you just try to make it better? Because I think it's worse.
Yeah, those piranhas start with the nipples first.
Yeah, I said titties instead of piranha.
It was a spoof, man. It was a spoof. It was funny as shit. But I'm not watching your show.
Oh, it looks like it's called Untold, the girlfriend who didn't exist.
That's embarrassing. I would rather watch Piranha double D titties.
Triple double D. All right, Earl.
Also, it looks like Lamar's season when he won the Heisman, Louisville was 9-4.
Exactly.
So,
but Lamar, and I think that's a good point too. Like Lamar was a freak, man. I mean, his stats were off the charts.
Yeah.
Off the charts.
Same with Manziel. Like Manziel's team wasn't great either. And he was a highlight all season, and so was Lamar Jackson. It was nuts the way he was,
Yeah, he was very reminiscent of Vic.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he was better than Vic, and Vic was amazing in college too. But that's my issue with Lamar. Like in college, I loved watching Lamar Jackson. My knock on Lamar now is that I don't think he's effective in the pros throwing the ball. He can still run. He's still a great athlete. We'll get into that when we do the Ravens stuff, but Lamar was a freak in college, man. But see, and here's my issue with the Heisman is the year that Tebow won it. I think the runner-up was McFadden, wasn't it, from Arkansas? Or wasn't it McFadden from Arkansas?
I'll have to look it up real quick.
And I think it was McFadden, and he was crushing it. Had an awesome year at Arkansas. They had a big upset. He was throwing touchdowns, running touchdowns.
You're right.
Yeah, catching touchdowns. And I'm like, how do you not give this guy the Heisman? Just because he's not on a winning team? I mean, nobody did more for a football team than McFadden did. Nobody. And it's bullshit, man. That was a snub. That was a snub to me.
Third place was Colt Brennan.
Yeah, that's the guy. He was a quarterback when Hawaii said that Tebow was assistant quarterback.
Yeah.
Colt Brennan was the quarterback of Hawaii at that point.
Yeah.
Whatever. All right.
I agree. McFadden was clearly the best player in the country. That dude was a monster.
He was. He definitely should have won. And no outrage whatsoever. None.
And that was like the first time that the, I guess, Wildcat or whatever it's called, where you let the running back run the read option. That was like the first team.
But they definitely took it to the next level.
Well, they were the first big team to do it, and they crushed. I mean,
that dude was so good. And I think he had a pretty good NFL career too.
Yeah, with the Raiders, he was good too.
All right, so we finished Tennessee. Did a little Hendon Hooker Heisman discussion. All right, Jamie, I'll kick it over to you. So Tennessee is our team, obviously. Your team is Notre Dame. So we'll kick it over to you and let you go through your bullshit schedule. By the way, this is a complete bullshit schedule. You guys only have 4 games on the road. You go ahead and go. I'll let you go through it. I don't want to spoil it. You ready to go through this, man, or what? You fall asleep?
Ohio State's the first game.
Yeah, I'm ready. I don't know why. I mean, you said we'll kick it over to you, and then you started insulting my team before we even get into this.
No, I didn't. I insulted the strength of schedule, but go ahead.
It's all Notre Dame hate, but yeah, let's kick it off. So obviously we open the season. It's the marquee game of college football for week 1. We play at Ohio State. We're currently a 2-touchdown underdog. But I think we go in there and I think we win. I think we're stronger in the trenches. So I like our offensive line and our defensive line better than theirs. Obviously they have the more proven skill players, but I think it's going to be a grind out game. And I think the battle in the trenches is what's going to win it for us.
Zach, I'll go third on these picks. Zach, you can go second.
Okay. Yeah, I have this one as a loss. Ohio State they've been doing what they do for 20 years. Notre Dame lost their head coach, lost their quarterback. I don't think they were that good to begin with compared to Ohio State, especially at Ohio State. So I think Ohio State's going to win it pretty handily. Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll see. First games are always hard to predict without knowing anything and turnover and all that. But Ohio State's been a machine for 20 years, as much as I hate them. And I just think the changeover with the coach and quarterback is just a big question mark for me to think that they can go into Ohio State for the opener and take the win. It's going to be a crazy environment with all those hillbillies out there in fucking Ohio. But, I think they'll get it. I think Ohio State will get it done.
Yeah, I've never heard about the hillbillies in Ohio, but I mean, I guess they're there.
Rednecks, whatever we want to call them, assholes.
Yeah. Well, they're a different breed of fan, that's for sure. But anyway, I agree. I think Ohio State is battle tested over the last couple of decades. I mean, they're a good team. They keep a lot of talent on the field, and this season is going to be no different. They're gonna. I think they'll do a pretty good job in the Big Ten, like they have in the recent past. I don't see Notre Dame being able to keep up with the speed. Jamie, you talked about the skill players. Maybe early on, those battles in the trenches, or maybe if Notre Dame can slow the tempo down and run the ball. I don't know what their game plan is, but I do think that I think the speed of Ohio State gets them, and I think the 2-touchdown spread is a little bit big. I'm really surprised at that. If Notre Dame's coming in at number 5 in the country, I don't really understand the 2-touchdown difference in a week 1 game. Really, for any two big teams, and nobody's really, you don't know anything about anybody. Everybody's getting their systems worked out. I don't know. I don't really like the spread, but I do think that Ohio State controls the game. And before you do your next pick, I'm going to do to you what Zach did to me and spoil the surprise. And everybody know that you had your team going 12-0. So go ahead and keep going.
Yeah, thanks for that. But I will say, like you said, we only have 4 away games. The BYU game is considered a home game for us, but it's actually played in Las Vegas. It's our Shamrock Series game because we do cool shit like that. And then the Navy game is a home game for Navy, which is played at Baltimore Ravens Stadium. So fuck you. All right. So second game is Marshall. I don't, we all had that as a win. Marshall's not very good. You guys want to talk about that or just
keep it going?
You better hope Matthew McConaughey doesn't show up.
Well, actually, I hope he does because when he was coaching there, they went like 1-9 or something. So, come on out.
That was some disrespectful shit too. Don't even start talking about that movie. That shit was disrespectful.
It was disrespectful that they were trying to say that Marshall, whatever. Week 3, we play California. It's our green out game. Irish wear green. Pretty big deal. California is not very good. We all have that as a win. So we're just going to keep going.
Yeah, but before you keep going, I mean, nobody gives a shit that it's your green out game or your Shamrock Series game. But I do want to say about this California game, I wouldn't be.
Hold up. So the green out game and the Shamrock Series are 2 different things.
I know.
If you're going to talk shit, just be correct. That's all I ask.
I did separate the 2. I said nobody gives a shit about your green out game or your Shamrock Series game. Nobody cares except Notre. And you're like, it's a pretty important thing. Only the Notre Dame fans. Nobody else gives a fuck. Keep going.
Were you going to say something?
No, I'm done. Keep going.
Did you realize it wasn't important?
No, you kind of ruined my flow.
Week 4. Week 4, North Carolina. I think North Carolina is a respectable team, but they lost Sam Howell. They still have Downs, their best receiver. So, I mean, they have some talent, but I think that's a pretty easy win for us.
I don't know about easy, but I do think you guys win.
Yeah, I have this one as a loss for Notre Dame. And this is mainly, I think they're going to lag a little bit with the new coach and new quarterback. And this is a game that they probably should win. But I feel like they're going to drop one along this. I feel like they're going to drop one somewhere in the season that they shouldn't. And I picked North Carolina. It's on the road. North Carolina is typically a pretty all over the place team. So I picked this one as an upset.
Yeah, I don't think it's that bad of an upset pick. I mean, because North Carolina, I agree, they're pretty sporadic. They seem to have games once or twice a year that they really kind of go crazy with and score a bunch of points. I don't think they have the talent or the size to keep up with Notre Dame, and so I don't see that one. I actually, I'll let Jamie continue on because the next game is the one where I think they get tripped up a little bit. Jamie,
the next game is the Shamrock Series game played in Las Vegas against BYU, which BYU had a decent season last year. They're returning a bunch of their guys, so they should be even better this year. not saying they're a powerhouse, but they are a team that you have to, be focused and come with your A game, or it's going to be a game that you can potentially lose. Obviously, I have us winning every game, so I'll kick it to Zach. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I haven't beaten BYU. If I'm right about North Carolina and they lose, this would be a bounce back game. And I think BYU is another one of those teams that they're pretty well coached usually, but very average talent. So I think at the end of the day, Notre Dame just outclasses them.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think Zach, that we're exactly reversed on the North Carolina BYU philosophy. So the prediction you made in North Carolina is pretty much the exact same prediction, and the reasons. The only thing I would add is that Notre Dame or teams traveling to the West Coast. And I know that BYU is not all the way on the West Coast, but traveling across the country. You said they're playing in Vegas, right? That game's in Vegas.
Yeah.
So just kind of traveling, making that kind of travel right in the middle of the season. I think that after Notre Dame drops the game to Ohio State in the opener, I think that Notre Dame is really feeling the pressure of having to win every game. And I do think, I agree that with a new coach and a new quarterback, I do think they trip up somewhere midway. And I think it's most likely BYU. So that's my rationale there.
I assume we don't know the time of that game yet because BYU is in Utah, which is Pacific time, as is Vegas. And obviously Notre Dame's in Central. So
yeah, I'd imagine it's going to be, well, Notre Dame is it's on Eastern.
Oh, Notre Dame's on Eastern time?
So even worse. Yeah, but it'll probably be a night game. And the other thing to mention, I mean, it is, it's an important thing that you have Notre Dame traveling to the West Coast to play this game, but we do that multiple times a year. We play a national schedule, so it's not like it's a new thing for us or something we're not used to.
I know.
I was thinking more if it was a 1 o'clock Eastern game, they'd be playing at 10 a.m. our time, so they'd be be a little bit different.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's probably going to be a night game, but the latest that it'll be is a 3, or the earliest it'll be is a 3:30 game. So there's no chance that it's a early morning game. All right. So next up is Stanford. Obviously, Stanford is not, the Stanford that, I'm used to as being a respectable program. They're down. They're not very good. I think we kind of, this is an easy win for us.
I don't have much to say about that. The only thing Stanford's beating Notre Dame in this year is fucking academics. So.
Yep. I like that pick.
All right. The next one is UNLV. UNLV is, not a good team. So I think we can skip through that.
Yep.
Okay. Syracuse, also, not a very good team. You guys all have wins. Anything to talk about?
Nah.
I don't think Syracuse is good either, but is that game in October or November? I think late October is what it looks like.
No, it's late October. It's the last week of October.
Yeah, so it will be interesting since it's in upstate New York, and obviously it'll be cold as balls. But
they're playing the Dome.
Oh yeah, that's right. So that's not even interesting then. I was going to say Syracuse is one of those weird teams too that you never know when they're going to show up. But yeah, I think Notre Dame just beats their ass. So
yeah,
Syracuse still plays in the Carrier Dome, right? Or is the Carrier Dome still a thing? Is it gone?
I'm not sure. I think Syracuse can be a sneaky team, but only if you're Clemson. Which brings us to the next game. Our next game is against Clemson, which Clemson has been a powerhouse as of late. Well-coached team with a ton of talent. Depending on their quarterback situation, because they have DJ, who struggled a bit last year, and then they have Cade Klubnik, which is a 5-star true freshman that came in. He's super talented. So depending on who the quarterback is there, I think if it's DJ, I feel really good about the game. If it's Cade and he, takes over the spot and he's playing at a high level, I'm a little bit more concerned about that game. But either way, I think we win no matter who their starting quarterback is.
Yeah, you are right about the Carrier Dome being their home stadium. I had this one as a loss for Notre Dame. Clemson, I mean, they've been recruiting at a high level for a decade. I think they've dropped off quite a bit over the course of the last 6 years, they've had a slow drop off. Well, maybe it's pretty sudden if you consider Trevor Lawrence leaving the drop off, but they've gradually gotten worse. But I think they'll still beat Notre Dame. Again, I think Notre Dame right now is in kind of an unpredictable level since they had the changes they do, and Clemson is a steady program. So I think if nothing else, they'll have a good defense. And best case, I think for Notre Dame is it's a grind out, tough, physical win.
Yeah, I have Notre Dame as a win. I won't be surprised if they lose. I don't have a whole lot of faith in Clemson. I think they're on the decline. I was really disappointed with how they looked last year, and so maybe I'm being a little bit harsh because my position is basically until I see that they bounced back, I'm not going to put any faith in them. But I do think, as much as I don't really like Notre Dame, I've never had in my entire life. They do keep a pretty good roster and it could have pretty good amount of talent. They're still a solid football team, and I don't think that Clemson, if they're sort of in that struggle phase like they were last year, I just don't see them winning that game. So I picked Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame is going to win, but I think it's more about Clemson being on the decline than it is about Notre Dame just being that strong. I think Notre Dame is good, but I think Clemson is on somewhat of a decline at this point.
Yeah. So the next week we play Navy, which, like I said, is a home game for them. It's at the Ravens Stadium in Baltimore. Navy, every once in a while, Navy has a tricky team, a decent team, but this isn't the year. They've not been good for a long time, but they don't even have, every once in a while they'll have a quarterback that's dynamic and can run the option very well, and they can score points and move the ball. This isn't that type of team. It should be an easy win for us. The most important thing for this week is to keep everybody healthy and not have any injuries.
I think it's a walk.
Yeah, I don't have much to say either.
All right. The next week we play Boston College, which Boston College, I know they're not a high profile team, but they do have some talent. We have a couple of kids that, were at Notre Dame that transferred there. Their starting quarterback, Phil Dracovic, he was at Notre Dame for 2 years. He was a 4-star recruit. Had a good year last year. And, I think he's a good quarterback. I think this game will be closer than people think, but obviously I think we win.
I agree. I don't think this is a competitive game.
Yeah, I could easily see this being a 31-3 type game.
Okay.
All right, and then we close the season against USC, who obviously they have Lincoln Riley. They have a ton of transfers that they've brought in. They have a ton of talent. I think this will be a really fun game. It'll be back and forth, a shootout. I think it'll be pretty exciting. But the issue with USC is the success just doesn't happen overnight. I don't think just bringing in transfers equals a dominant football team. They're still weak in the trenches. I think we expose them there. I do think they can score, and they do have some matchup issues, and they have a ton of talent. So I think it'll be an awesome game. But obviously, I think that we win that game, go 12-0, and we punch our ticket to the college football playoffs, and hopefully
get your ass whipped again.
And hopefully Tennessee makes the playoffs, because I think if we play Tennessee in the playoffs, our luck might change.
Yeah, we run you guys out of the stadium.
I had this one as a loss for Notre Dame. I think the travel to the West Coast, and I think USC is going to be better than anticipated. And at this point in the season, obviously, there's no way to know what's going to happen 12 games from now. But you just don't know who's going to show up in the last game. I think USC is going to be playing for, a New Year's Bowl, whatever. The BCS Bowls, whatever the fuck they're called now.
BCS.
New Year's
Throwback.
Yeah, I know. The big bowls. I think USC is going to be playing for that. So I think they're going to show up. I think they're going to end up getting the win at home. I don't think it's going to be a blowout or anything, but I think they'll take it.
I think they'll control the game. I do. I'm not a big believer in Notre Dame, and mainly I don't know what they've done in the offseason. I don't track recruiting and all that crap. I don't give a shit about it. I want to see the guys when they get to the campus and they get on the field. I used to track the recruiting. I just don't care about it. So Notre Dame, I'm sure they've made some changes, added some personnel, but they're going to be young. I think the thing I found really disappointing was that bowl game last year. And I know players sit out, and I know that they're getting ready to draft day. I understand all that stuff, but I think the way that Notre Dame lost that and the lack of offensive productivity, giving up the lead, I have some concerns with them coming into the year. And so I'm going to need to see, as a fan of college football, not Notre Dame, but I know you're a fan, Jamie, of Notre Dame. And so for me to be a believer in Notre Dame, I would need to see that this coach can manage the team and can manage these big time games, because we, as the Tennessee fans, and Zach and I will tell you, we've been going through these coaching changes for the better part of 15 years now. And these coaches, they get there, and even when they've had success at other levels, they're just not ready to manage that kind of organization. You can see it. You can see it when they're on the sideline. They just don't. They're just not ready. And so I do think it's a big order to take on a program like Notre Dame. And that first year, I think that your expectations are a little bit lofty to go 12-0, even if you have the personnel just kind of putting all that together in year one. I think is a tall order. And I think USC, with Lincoln Riley, who's already managed the program at Oklahoma, who's already had immediate success. I mean, I know that he had talent that he took over for Oklahoma. He didn't have to bring people in. He just had to continue. But I do think he's going to have instant success. I think USC is has a huge recruiting pool. There's a lot of talent. It's a big market team. He's already shown that he can be successful right away. And I think that USC, I actually think, really controls this game. I don't think Notre Dame is ever, I don't think it's going to be competitive. I don't think it's going to be a blowout, but I don't think it's going to be competitive. I think USC controls that game.
Yeah, we'll have to figure out a bet because that's a good one that we can put on the spreadsheet. But the other thing I'll say, obviously Marcus Freeman is a huge question mark because we don't know if he can be successful as a head coach. The only difference is he's coming into a program that's established and is in standing where, other coaches generally, when they get a job, the program's in disarray and there's a lot of work to be done, where Marcus Freeman just needs to step in and keep it going and make it better.
I agree with that.
And I think the thing that really, separates us from the teams that are successful in the college playoff and championship teams is that there's a talent drop off, obviously. And Marcus Freeman is an awesome recruiter. We have a top 3 class right now for 23 and 24. So if he starts bringing in those players and he can raise the bar in recruiting, I think that's a positive. That'll be a good thing for us, obviously, if we can get better players. And then the bowl game that you're talking about, we actually started that game 21-0. We got out to a huge lead, and then our defense kind of struggled in the second half. But in that game, there was probably 3 or 4 coaches, coordinators that they kind of knew that they were out the door. We didn't really have any players sit out, so we had our full team. But I mean, I'll be the first to tell you that our team wasn't very good last year. We might have been, 12-1 or 11. What were we? 11-2.
11-2 after that Oklahoma State loss.
Yeah, so 11-2, but our team was not on that level. Oklahoma State, they were runner up to the Big 12 championship. Not saying that they were a great team either, but they were a good team. I just think that I don't think you can judge Marcus Freeman based on that performance in that bowl game because, I mean, our coach had just left a couple weeks before. The staff was kind of thrown together, and they were just trying to make it through the game. So I think it's unfair. The coaches that he did bring in that are coming into this year, they're all upgrades to the coaches that we had before. And we have Al Golden is our defensive coordinator, who he's been a head coach at other places, and he was at the Bengals last year as a linebackers coach. That team went to the Super Bowl, obviously. And then we have Harry Heastan, which is a legendary offensive line coach. So he's going to get that unit back to where they need to be. And then we have Tommy Reese as our offensive coordinator, which that hasn't changed. Where I think in the past, Brian Kelly kind of limited Tommy Reese's control over our offense. I think this year, well, I'm hoping that it takes a step forward and our offense is much better. So as much of the things that you guys are saying is new and there's so many question marks, there's also things that are improved and are probably going to be much better. So, I mean, you can take it both ways. Obviously me, I'm going to be optimistic and you guys are going to be, pessimistic on those points, but I don't know. I'm feeling good about our season and the coaches that we have. And then I truly believe Marcus Freeman is the guy for our program to bring us back.
Yeah, I know you've been pretty excited about him taking over the program, and that's what I'm not judging him based on one game. So just so I'm clear, I don't have any judgment. I don't know anything about Marcus Freeman, so that I think that's my problem. Is that the only thing that I know is what I watched in the Oklahoma State game, and I do understand that bowl games they're very weird games, and for lots of reasons, especially when you're going through a coaching turnover. And so I get all that. I think that's fair. Again, my issue is not that you guys lost. My issue was that you lost 21-0. And I know that you said your defense, started to struggle a little bit. And there was issues with the coordinators. But Tommy Reese is returning. He's a guy that had a job. And your offense just kind of stopped. I don't want to go through that whole game because it's really not worth it. We're going to find out this year, just a couple of weeks when the season kicks off. We're going to know what's going on. And how Marcus Freeman is going to respond to, being the guy on the sideline versus a coordinator. I mean, we've never done it, but we know it's different. We've heard the guys on TV talk about the difference in sort of managing the entire program versus just having to worry about, your unit. And so I'll just be curious to see how successful he is. I'm certainly not rooting against him. I mean, I don't have any reason to. I need to see something before I can have any faith after with the only thing I can gauge is Oklahoma State. I just got it. And that Oklahoma State game, it also would be unfair to judge them on too. I think you get beat soundly in that game. But again, I don't think that would also be fair to judge what kind of success he may or may not have. I think that's a tough game for a year one coach. I think that's a tough game to walk into, just taking over a program. I'll be more interested. If you guys win, that's great. But if you don't, I'll be more interested in the response, how you do in games 2 through 9 before you hit that USC game. That'll be much more telling and much more interesting to see kind of how he's managing that program. But we'll see.
Yeah, for me, it's not about whether or not he's good at his job as much as we've seen at Tennessee, we've seen coordinators go from coordinator to head coach, and it's just a different world. And even head coaches, like we had Butch Jones, who went from Cincinnati head coach to our head coach, and he froze. Every big game that we had, and he was making decisions, he shit his pants. So for me, it's more just an unknown. Like you don't know how this guy's going to respond to the pressure. You don't know how he's going to respond to taking over a program. So we'll see is where I'm at. So to me, 8-4 for a first-year head coach is a solid season. It's not an insult to him, even though they were 11-1 last year going to the bowl game. It's just a matter of, is he fit for this job or not? And we have no idea.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything you guys are saying, but I think 8-4, given like in your situation, if you guys had a coach come in and go 8-4 his first year, you guys would be excited. If Marcus Freeman goes 8-4 this year, he underachieved because our schedule is not super hard and our team is established. We're not rebuilding. We're ascending. So 8-4 would be a disappointing season as an Irish fan.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair too, especially coming in number 5. I mean, the bar is high. So.
And the expectation for all fans is for their team to go undefeated. I mean, that's just the way it is. So 8-4, I'm not looking for an 8-4 season from Tennessee. Now I'm realistic. So if the season ends and we finished at 8-4, but all the signs are pointing in the right direction in terms of what Heupel is doing with our program, you got to be able to evaluate that fairly. I think as a fan, I that's the kind of fan I would want to be anyway. But but during the season, you want to win all the games, man. I mean, I don't 8-4 is not the goal.
I can't remember the last coach that we had that you didn't want fired after one fucking game.
I don't give a shit.
First loss out the door.
Well, if it's a bad loss, look, man, the coaches we brought in were shitty. They were shitty hires, and that's my point. I think partially to Jamie, and I think this might be a major reason for our perspective versus yours. Is we've tried to get excited and have gotten excited over some coaches that have come through, only to see what busts they were. So we've learned the hard way over 15 years to keep your expectations, in check, because it's very frustrating when things go south a little bit. And I actually don't disagree with Zach. I think that I know you guys want to go to the playoff, and certainly if you did it, I don't think it would be the most shocking thing in the world. But I don't think you guys were very good last year either. I think there are games that you escaped that probably should have lost. I wasn't overly impressed. I also don't think Brian Kelly was a good coach. So I don't know how much of that was him. I think he's a terrible coach. And so I do think if you go 8-4, I think that's equally not shocking. Because I do think that you guys are going to have to get established and really bounce back from you can look at the record and say, well, we were 11-1. That really wasn't the story, though. You guys, I mean, the Toledo game was pitiful.
The Florida State game looked worse as the year went on too.
Yeah, the Florida State game. There were some very concerning indicators there about the Notre Dame team. And I know you guys got everybody back, but my thing would be how good were they to begin with, and really how do they roll into this season? Let me ask you this, because I don't know this. I saw on TV today that the starter got announced. Was that going to be the starter all the way through, or was that a surprise? Is sophomore or something like that?
No, everyone knew that.
Okay. So, and he wasn't the starter last year. So it is a new starting quarterback and a new head coach, correct? Same offensive coordinator?
Yeah. So Buckner, the quarterback that was named the starter, he was a true freshman last year. He had like a limited role. He had a special package where most of his plays were running, or like where he could use his feet and make plays. So
is he a dual threat? Is he a dual threat guy?
He's dual threat. Yeah, he's able to run and make plays, but he can also throw the ball pretty well too. But last year, based on him learning the playbook, a lot of times they trusted him to use his feet to make plays rather than throw the ball. He did throw the ball a good bit for the limited time that he got, to where he can throw the ball. But this will be his first full year starting. So, and no one's surprised at that. He was the leader from the jump, and everyone thought that he was going to be the starter. So no surprise.
The guy that was quarterback last year, did he graduate?
Yeah, so he was a grad transfer from Wisconsin.
Okay.
Jack Cohn, like his stats were fine last year. He just doesn't fit our offense, and we had some offensive line struggles last year, and he was not mobile at all. So it was just a bad combination. He's the type of quarterback where if you have a good offensive line and you can get the ball out of his hands quickly, he'll do well. But that wasn't always the case last year for us. And, he got sacked a ton. I was, yelling at the TV every week saying, put Buckner in, or put Drew Pine in, put anybody in. I hated that. I hated that we picked him up as a grad transfer. I like our guys. And I didn't think that he was, he had success at Wisconsin, but he got beat out by Graham Mertz. Graham Mertz sucks, the Wisconsin quarterback. So, I mean, if you get beat out by that guy, you should probably quit. You should probably, not play football anymore. And he
took over the starting job at Notre Dame. What are you talking about?
That's what I'm saying. I didn't like the decision. I thought our guys we should have just went with our guys, because last year, I think we all knew, as Notre Dame fans, we weren't expecting a ton last year. Like, we knew we were going to have a down year. So I feel like it would have been much more productive for us to get our guy a year of experience, either Drew Pine or Buckner. But instead, they bring in this grad transfer who does nothing for us, and then we're starting over fresh this year, where we're starting a new starting quarterback. I thought it would have been much smarter to get our guy ready last year and be coming in, with more experience this year.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. I think we lost Zach. He'll be back. Yeah, so to sort of sum this up, you got Notre Dame going 12-0. I think that's a fan's pick. It's the same way my Tennessee one was. Zach's got them 8-4, and I got them 9-3. I think anywhere between 8-4 and 12 and not 12-0, but I think I actually do think anywhere between 8-4 and 11-1 is realistic. I do think if they run the table after the Ohio State game, it really changes the dynamics of that USC game at the end of the season, because they're probably at that point in the discussions of the playoff again. I hope they don't go, because I don't want to see them get beat down like that again. But people want to keep saying it, keep putting them in there. I don't care.
Yeah, but I think if you see Notre Dame lose to Ohio State, but that game is close, and then Ohio State is a good team and is the Big Ten champion, you don't think that Notre Dame could be competitive in the playoffs this year if they run the table with that schedule and play Ohio State tough?
I think it depends. I mean, we've talked about this a little bit, and I think if you lose a competitive game against Ohio State, I don't think there's any shame in that, especially in week one. I think week one is really strange. I think most people would agree with that, which is why most teams schedule really small schools. It's almost their preseason game. But I like the big games as the first game of the season. I like the teams that schedule the big boys and put those marquee matchups out there. I think my thing would be what they do the rest of the way. So if they lose to Ohio State in a close game, and then they really dominate the rest of the schedule, then yes, I think they're in the discussion, and the rest of the schedule holds up. If Clemson is good and only drops to Notre Dame, if USC is good and only drops 1 or 2 with Notre Dame being 1, if BYU has a respectable season, I think if they have a good enough resume, I think they definitely deserve to be in the discussion. But I think there's a couple things that really matter. One is how they lose to Ohio State. If they lose, if they lose by 2-3 touchdowns, I don't want to see them there again. Because my other thing is that I'm not a big believer in Ohio State either. I think getting to play in the Big Ten is a benefit. I'm obviously, as a Tennessee fan, I'm an SEC guy, and I just think that Ohio State, I don't view them the way that I view Bama, Georgia, and the big boys that come out of the SEC. And the ACC, I have no respect for, other than Clemson. Clemson's the only one that's really, at least lately, I know Miami and Florida State have their history, but lately it's really only been Clemson that's been able to put the talent on the field to play with the SEC and win a couple of titles. They have 2, right? Dabo has 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. So outside of that, I mean, you look at these leagues, and I don't really like the fact that I don't think there's a lot of competition in the Big Ten or the ACC. So to me, losing to Ohio State, even if they're competing for a Big Ten, I don't know that alone is enough for me. For me, I need to see a dominating performance from Notre Dame. Number one, to respond to the loss, and number 2, to show that they're on that level at least, and now they're taking care of business the rest of the way. So that's the way it'd be for me. If they get dominated by Ohio State, I don't want to hear about Notre Dame the rest of the year. I mean, we will, because you're on the show here, and so we'll talk about them to entertain you. But in terms of the rest of the media and the rest of the world trying to put these dudes back in the playoff, I just don't want to hear it, man. They need to get in a conference, and that's the thing too. If they get in a conference, get back in it. So if you're in the Big Ten, then okay, you lose Ohio State, you fall 1 game behind, win the conference, and then you're easily back in the discussion. You're playing a better schedule, in theory, and you maybe have a crack back at them in the conference title game or something along those lines. And so I think it's a different story. But with Notre Dame being independent and your guys' schedule, which at least on paper, I don't know what these teams are going to do, but on paper looks bad. I think that Ohio State game is critical. So,
I actually don't agree at all with that. I think the Ohio State game I guess it's not a win-win, but I think it's a win, no lose for Notre Dame. Even if they go out and get their ass beat, I think if they win the rest of their games, show that they're getting better as the season goes on, the media is going to do everything they can to get Notre Dame in the playoff. I mean, 11-1 Notre Dame with the only loss in week 1 to Ohio State, there's a million excuses built in. So to me, that they would get there in that case. They'd be probably the 4 seed, assuming Ohio State's the 1 or 2. They probably, it wouldn't match them up again, I assume. But to me, Notre Dame is, if they're a 1-loss team and the only loss is to Ohio State, who's actually top 5, I can't see them being kept out.
Jamie, you want to wrap it up?
I agree with Zach. I think that as long as Ohio State, if we lose that game, and as long as Ohio State is the Big Ten champ, Notre Dame will definitely get in the playoff.
Oh, that's the bold statement right there. If they lose game 1, there's no definite the rest of the way.
Yeah, I think they would definitely get in the playoffs if they win the rest of the games. And
Put
you
that sheet.
You were saying that we need to join a conference based on what? I mean, I know you would like to see us in a conference, but we've never been left out of the playoff where we actually deserve
No. Yeah, I don't care if you guys join a conference. I've always said I think Notre Dame should join a conference because I think the fact that they don't have to play a conference game, or I do think they should schedule an extra game. I think Notre Dame gets some benefits that other teams don't get, and I know they like the autonomy of being independent, I guess. So they create their own schedules and do all this nonsense. But just like with and we talked about this, the COVID, you don't want to be in a conference and COVID hits and everybody plays in conference games. Sit your ass out for the year. There should be a price to pay with that. I'm not saying they should join. I'm saying I think they should feel the consequence of not being in one. So if you lose that game 1 and you're number 5 rolling into week 13, so week 12, you've already finished your season. You're 11-1. You won the last game. You're number 5. I don't care what happens to 1 through 4. I don't think Notre Dame should be allowed to play up. I don't think they should be able to sit at home while everybody plays an extra game in a conference title game and then benefit from somebody getting knocked out of a potential playoff spot as a result of that extra game. So those are the issues I have. I'm not saying they should join. I'm saying if they want to have an equal conversation and benefit of the doubt to get into the playoff, there should be an equal playing field. And the conferences are more equal than what Notre Dame is doing. Your schedule sucks.
Yeah, so I agree. I agree with the unfair advantages, and I also know that Notre Dame is, Notre Dame. They're always going to make a case for Notre Dame to get in the playoffs because they're Notre Dame. So I understand all that. I'm not denying any of that. But the first thing I want to say is the COVID thing. When we were kind of left out and we needed to join a conference to have a season, everybody was willing to take us. And it's like that now. Like if we were to say, hey, we want to join a conference, everyone would court us. So I know you get upset and you say Notre Dame should do this and that, but based on what? We don't have to. We're able to be independent and take our part in college football.
I think you can make the case that you guys got left out last year because of it.
No.
If you guys had been in a conference and won a conference championship, I think you would have been in the playoff.
Exactly.
That's true, but that team wasn't going to win a conference championship. That team belong in the playoffs.
No, I'm not saying they would have or anything like that. I'm just saying if you guys had been 12-1 with the ACC championship or whatever, I think they would have been over Cincinnati.
They would have. They would have. But I didn't want to see that team in the playoff last year. That wasn't a good team.
No, I know. I know. I'm just saying I think that the weight of Notre Dame's schedule did drag them down, regardless of the results, obviously, because Alabama would have beat their ass. But so the fact that you guys weren't there, I think does speak to the fact that they're starting to be punished for not being in a conference.
Yeah.
And there's the fatigue. There's also the fatigue of watching Notre Dame, and this is a somewhat separate issue, but watching them do well enough to make it to the playoff and then get their ass completely whipped. And so there is the discussion, and I know they're media darlings. I get that, and I know that that yes, during COVID, so everybody knew was going to take them. What I'm saying is I think it's bullshit. I think they should be left out. I'm not saying that I thought they would be left out. I'm saying I think they should be left out. But what I'm saying now is that as much as Notre Dame is a media darling and people are going to try to get them in, the money and the TV and the viewers and all that crap, we all know that. But I think that there's a growing number of people that are saying enough with these guys. But we give them the benefit of the doubt. We make the case to get them in. They go in and they get their ass kicked. Notre Dame has 0 competitive games when it comes to national titles or playoffs over the past 10 years. So I know you guys were in the BCS against Alabama right before that ended. And then you've been in a couple playoff series. And it's been, I mean, they've gotten murdered. And I do think it makes people start to question, wait a minute, these guys, sometimes they're sitting at home, they're getting in at the last second, they're playing a really weak schedule as evidenced by what happens when they get in with the big boys. No marquee wins over that same time period. So it's not like you can point the finger and say, well, look, Notre Dame has beaten these good teams, but when they get to the playoff, they've just struggled in that system. They have no marquee wins, none. And so, and I don't even want to hear that bullshit about Clemson when they were number 1 with their backup quarterback. That's ridiculous. Because Notre Dame, because Clemson came right back, at the end of the season when they had their quarterback and obliterated you guys. You guys should have been out of the playoffs that year. That's the fatigue, and I think the irritation of the non-Notre Dame fans.
Yeah, and so, I mean, we haven't performed in big games, but I truly believe that you'll find that was a Brian Kelly issue. He's like you even said earlier, he's a terrible coach, and even more so in big games. So I'm hoping, obviously, that changes. The other thing that I want to say, you said that you think that Notre Dame shouldn't benefit from someone losing a conference championship game, right? So I just want to give you a scenario. Say that USC is undefeated. Their only loss is to us. So they're 11-1. They're playing in the Pac-12 championship against Oregon or Utah. Say Oregon or Utah has 2 or 3 losses and they're ranked, around 8, 9, 10. USC's ranked number 4. Notre Dame's ranked number 5. USC loses the Pac-12 game. Notre Dame has the head-to-head. Would you keep USC in the 4 spot or move Notre Dame?
I would keep USC in the 4 spot.
Well, how would USC even be in the 4 spot with Notre Dame having the head-to-head?
Well, if USC was 11-1.
Yeah, but they would never jump Notre Dame if Notre Dame beat them.
Well, in the scenario, say Notre Dame lost to Ohio State.
Yeah.
So Notre Dame's number 5, USC is 4. USC loses the head-to-head to Notre Dame, and they lose the Pac-12 championship. You're keeping USC in the playoff?
You guys would jump USC when you beat them. It's irrelevant.
I agree. So first of all, I agree with you, Zach. I think that if Notre Dame did enough to get to the spot behind USC, they would be put in front of USC. I agree with that. So I don't think this scenario would really exist. But since you put it out there, I'll answer it. No, I don't think Notre Dame should be allowed to go in because I don't think that USC should be penalized for losing a game. If USC is saying, I'm holding a playoff spot, we're a playoff team. Notre Dame is not. We play this extra game. They're sitting at home. We lose. We go home and they go in. I have an issue with it. I do. And it's not just Notre Dame. When the Big 12 wasn't playing a title game, I had the issue with them too. So, and there's 2 ways to fix it. Either you really penalize Notre Dame for being independent. You say, okay, look, we respect your independence, but you got to feel the consequence. If you don't make it in by week 12, when guys head into this conference title game, you're not in the mix. Or you tell the conferences, stop doing the extra game. Stop putting your conference at risk of losing a spot in the playoff to somebody who's not even going to play. And so I think they've got to fix that. It is not, and this is I'm listening, go ahead.
Are we talking about would or should? Like what would happen or what should happen?
If what?
Like in these scenarios that we're talking about. Because
it would be crazy to put a team in the playoff who lost to Notre Dame and also isn't a conference champion. I get that team shouldn't be penalized for playing in their conference championship game and losing. But in that scenario, you got to look at head-to-head, and the fact that USC isn't a conference champ, they're out.
Because if we're talking about should, then I agree with you, Tony. If we're talking about would, I think we've seen what would happen. The playoff committee is going to do whatever they want.
Yeah.
Ohio State has gotten in twice on the rationalization, one, that they won the conference, and two, that they had the better record when they didn't win the conference. Like the playoff committee is going to do whatever they want.
Yeah, we know that. That's why the question was, what would you do? And
you, as far as what should happen, it's a different conversation.
And you're saying that you would keep USC in, not being a conference champion, losing the head-to-head?
To me, if Notre Dame wins the head-to-head, they'll be ahead of them, so it's irrelevant. The head-to-head winner should always get first choice or preference or whatever you want to say. But I agree with what he's saying, that if Oklahoma and Baylor are in the 4 and 5 spots or whatever, 3 and 6, 3 and 6, and Notre Dame's in the 5 spot, and Oklahoma loses, that they should not be able to jump them when they didn't fucking play.
Exactly. And Jamie, and just to elaborate on your point, my issue again is that you guys aren't playing in the last week. And the head-to-head is part of it. It's a big part of it. I agree with that. But if USC, so in your scenario, the USC has to be undefeated coming into the last game with only a loss to you, right? So they have to be 11-1, and you guys are also 11-1.
Yes,
because it probably was a bad example. I just wanted to use a team where you had that head-to-head aspect in it, who didn't win their conference championship.
Well, I think I don't see a scenario where that's really realistic, but I will give you an example. Like so Georgia and Alabama played. I don't remember this is a couple of years ago, and I think Georgia lost both games. So I think Georgia only had one. They were undefeated, played Alabama, lost, went into the SEC title game, played Alabama again, and lost.
They were left out.
And they got left out. And I had a real issue with that. And see, this is, so I'm not, I know you want to talk about the head-to-head, and I do want teams to be punished that don't play that extra game. I really, really do, which is you, because Notre Dame's the only one benefiting from that. But that was bullshit. So Georgia, that year, Alabama was, I'm pretty sure was undefeated. And so Alabama's beating everyone. And so Georgia has the unlikely scenario where they had to play them twice. And what you're saying is, oh, well, Alabama's already beaten them twice. And so to me, what the committee, they don't come out and say this, but this is what they're saying in my mind is, we're going to knock Georgia out because we don't think they have a chance to win a national title because they've already played Alabama twice and lost. And now they have 2 losses. Well, they have 2 losses against the team that's the unanimous number 1, the team that's the favorite to win the national title. How does that not eliminate them from being a top 4 team? They beat everyone else. If Ohio State or Clemson or anybody else had played Alabama twice that year, they probably would have 2 losses too. That's the kind of stupid shit and the unfairness to the whole process in terms of the differences in conference versus the independence. And then the playoff committee just doing whatever the fuck they want with any rationale that fits the moment.
Yeah, I agree that Notre Dame shouldn't be rewarded for not playing in a championship game. I agree with that. My point was, if you have a team that's fighting for that 4th spot and there is a head-to-head component, I feel like you have to go with the head-to-head every time, especially when the team's not a conference champion.
I think that would always be resolved before the conference championships, was my point.
Unless they weren't in the conference championship, which again, they would have 2 losses. I don't think your example can exist because number 1, USC has 2 losses after they lose, so that they're going to use that rationale to get them out. Whether or not they're a conference champ is irrelevant. They're going to say, well, USC now has 2 losses, so they're gone. So I don't see that scenario really plays out. I think the scenario that would make more sense is number 1, if you had the head-to-head and they have to make the conference title. So I don't know how how that scenario works in your mind, but
yeah, I mean, it would have to be a situation like this where Notre Dame beats Ohio State, and then Ohio State loses the conference championship, but then Ohio State would have to jump them at some point in the season, which isn't going to happen.
Right.
So to me, the head-to-head thing will be resolved, but beforehand, it'll be irrelevant going into conference championship weekend.
Yeah, yes. I mean, you would think so, but last year, Michigan and Michigan State played a game, and I think Michigan State. There was something with Michigan State and Michigan, where Michigan State beat Michigan, but Michigan was ranked higher than Michigan State. So they completely ignored the head-to-head component.
Yeah, because Michigan won out and beat Ohio State, and Michigan State was like 8-4, whatever they were, right?
No, this was before that. So this was like when they did the initial rankings, they had Michigan ahead of Michigan State.
Yeah. Yeah, that did happen. I don't think Michigan State beat them, though. I think Michigan won, but there was something funky with the way they were rated, and there was a team that in head-to-head had won and was behind. That is true. I don't.
Yeah, that happened with Penn State and Ohio State a few years ago, which is why I brought that up. Where Penn State had 2 losses, beat Ohio State, won the conference title, and Ohio State got into the playoff because Penn State had 2 losses.
Yeah, and that's some bullshit.
Yeah.
And I don't like that it just comes down to heads and losses. Jamie, I think what would be a better comparison is if you said, let's say LSU loses to Alabama this year because otherwise undefeated, and Notre Dame goes 11-1. So I think then you have to start your argument would be, well, they're not playing the conference championship either, and so they're sitting at home on conference championship weekend the same as we are. But I think at that point, you have to look at the level of competition that's being played and the fact that LSU is tied to a conference and that in the SEC. And I do think it matters. I think when you're playing that conference schedule, I think it matters. I think it matters over the independents. And then I think you compare conference to conference. But if that scenario plays out, I'm putting LSU in over Notre Dame every single time, unless Notre Dame is playing Ohio State, USC, Stanford, Michigan, all these teams that they used to play who were powerhouses, but that's not the case anymore. Notre Dame's schedule is not, you can't, they're putting Notre Dame on this pedestal for, what they used to do. They haven't done it for a long time. They don't have the wins in a long time. They don't have the national titles in a long time, and they don't have the strength of schedule in a long time. The teams they're playing suck. And so you've got to feel the consequence. The Notre Dame fans like, we don't need to join a conference. Don't feel the pain there. Feel the pain when there's a draw, you lose. And I know that the media is not going to let that happen, but that's what's bullshit.
Yeah, but you keep saying feel the pain. There hasn't been any.
I know that you didn't. You just understand that was the point of what I was saying.
I know, but why would we join a conference then?
So last year, just to fill in Michigan State did beat Michigan. They were both undefeated going into the last weekend of October. But then the next week they lost to Purdue. And then 2 weeks later, they lost by 50 to Ohio State.
It doesn't matter. That next week when the polls came out, Michigan was still ahead of Michigan State.
That to me, that's absurd. And that's a poll issue.
Everything fixed itself as the year went on, but the initial poll literally had Michigan ahead of Michigan State.
Yeah. Because the Big Ten is not going to put themselves in a situation, and it's, to me, it's corrupt because they want to make sure that they have a lock to get into that playoff.
Yeah.
So leaving Michigan up there boosts the resume of Ohio State if they win, or keeps Michigan in position to get into Ohio State's spot if they win and get one of those teams in. So it's all about positions. You can't tell me this shit's not corrupt to some. This playoff shit's got to be fucking fixed, man. It's ridiculous.
The right thing to do is expand it, and that helps. I mean, you're still going to have the bias with the strength of schedules and the conferences being more dominant than others, but the talks, like what's projected to happen, is that the playoff is going to be extended to 12 teams. Like that's what the majority of the people want. That'll obviously help with things, but the way it is now, there's just not enough spaces for teams.
Yeah, I think it should be extended, and I think it should be transparent. And I think to me, like as a casual fan or whatever you want to say, the lack of transparency is what frustrates people.
Yes,
because all we get is a fucking list that says, "Hey, these 4 teams are in."
I agree with the transparency, like that they should televise it, which I think we all agree with.
Yep.
But the other thing is, I don't necessarily trust the committee. Like some of the people that they have in there, I don't even believe that they're watching the games, or they're the best people that should be saying,
for sure.
I don't trust the committee at all. And then when they have that chairman come on and speak to, Reese Davis and those guys, Kirk Herbstreit and all them, the guy's a total goober, and I'm like, this is the guy that is the head of this committee. It's a shame.
It's ridiculous. I don't understand. I don't understand how they are allowed to have these discussions in private. All the schools are being impacted. All, everybody in every school in the country that competes for these at this level is being impacted, and they get to go into a private room and say, "Yep, here's who we picked, like it or not." It's complete bullshit. It is total and complete bullshit. I can't stand it.
Yeah, I agree.
I would be much more angry if Tennessee had been good over the past few years and gotten snubbed. We haven't. But I can assure you that when we get back at that level, and it'll be soon, probably this year when we go 12-0, if there's a team,
we'll still be the number 5 seed.
Right. If there's a team that's going to get snubbed, it's going to be Tennessee. You better believe that shit.
You guys can't get snubbed.
I mean, you can name the snubs over the years and the bullshit that's happened. I mean,
yeah, but Tennessee, if you guys win the SEC, I mean, there's no snub there. And even if you get to the championship game and lose the championship game, you're still in at that point too, because you beat all those teams.
if we go one loss into the championship game and then lose it, get the boot. Yeah.
Depends who the loss is.
If we lost Alabama in the regular season, that's our natural West rival, SEC West rival. If we lost to Bama by a field goal in the regular season, beat Georgia, beat Kentucky, beat Pitt, beat all the other guys that beat Florida, beat LSU, and then go to the SEC title and lose another field goal game to Alabama, we're fucking out. We're not going to the playoff.
Or Auburn or whoever. Yeah.
Yeah, regardless of no, I want it to be Alabama twice, because that goes right back to the point I was making before, which is we would have lost to what's probably the number 1 team in the country. We would have beaten probably the best collection of teams on against. You could put that resume against anybody's. Won't matter. We'll be out because they got to make room for Ohio States or the Notre Dames or the USCs or the Michigans or whatever. Bullshit. I just wish the SEC would break away and do their own thing. I really do.
Yeah, the good thing for you is you guys won't be in the SEC championship game, so you don't have to worry about it.
That's what you think.
Okay.
That's what you think. You don't know that, but you know what we do know is that your ass won't be in any fucking conference title game. We know that shit. That we know for sure.
Do you want to wrap it up here and then start our top 25 conversation?
Yeah. Let's we got some stuff to get into in episode 2, so we should start to wrap episode 1. Any final thoughts on the picks? I thought the picks were all really fair. Clearly there was some bias for the specific fans. But I think overall, if you were to average these picks, I think there's probably about right on point. So yeah, pretty good. Any final thoughts before we go?
What are you, Jerry Springer?
If I was Jerry Springer, I would be giving a final thought. I'm asking for a final thought.
Wrap it up.
So
he's like Anchorman.
So let me ask you this. Does anybody have any final thoughts?
Wrap it up, man.
All right. That's a wrap.
That's what she said.